right here. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the documents in particular. And so for the DBQ, it seems like a lot of kids, like last week we talked about the introductory paragraph and the thesis statement, kind of like thesis statement development, because it seems like where most kids are, or one of the reasons that they're missing that supports point is because they don't really have a clear argument. They're not making their thesis statements either too broad or it's too specific. And therefore it makes how they use the documents more difficult, right? So for sure, the most important part of this is having a thesis statement, a good thesis statement. But it is also important to know that you can still earn the supports point without necessarily having earned the thesis statement point, okay? So as an example, if a kid with the Cold War DBQ, I'm going to use that as an example today. If a kid said to some extent or another that like the Cold War impacted American society politically and strongly impacted American society politically and economically, period, that wouldn't earn the point. But what if in the body paragraphs they are arguing consistently that it helped create jobs? We're going to use that example today, right? That, document 5 where they show that like this led to job growth. Like if they're doing that in their essay, then they can still earn that supports point. So if you're really stressed out about a thesis statement, just make sure that you know that as you're writing your essay and you might kind of like get some momentum and you start to realize like, oh, wait, I am arguing this, then you can make sure that you include that and with that document or the documents. And then for sure, make sure at the end of your essay, you try that thesis statement one more time, okay?
Wait, so if we had like a better thesis at the end of the essay, would that like give us the point?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I look for it in both places. Like, so before I put, like, if we were to like, look at the rubric, before we're going to zoom out though. That is really zoomed in, right? So if I'm looking at the rubric, and I come to your thesis statement, like in the introductory paragraph, and it's like too broad, too weak, I'll go to the very end and just look for one. And most kids are restating it. And I don't think I've actually awarded anyone yet, but that doesn't mean we haven't really done enough yet to where, but for sure you could do that. The thesis statement, like if you look at it, if we zoom back in, thesis must make a claim that responds to the prompt rather than merely restating it or rephrasing it. It must consist of one or that should say 2 sentences located in one place, either in the introduction or in the conclusion. It's 2 sentences though. Like I've been to the AP reading. I know what they count and what they don't count. It can't be more than that. Okay. So if we take that whole rubric and we look just at the documents, okay, the describes, supports, explains, I think is kind of intimidating. So for sure today, please stop me at any point and ask questions. That's the most helpful thing. Because to me, this makes sense in my head because I use it every day for multiple years. So for you guys, but what's most important is that you understand it. And if you're doing the exam digitally, I highly recommend that you print out the rubric and have that somewhere. You're not going to be able to, I think that the College Board app won't prevent you for like, you're not going to be able to like leave the test, right? Even if you have like dual monitors, I don't think that that's going to work. So I would print it out and have it ready, use that resource. That's one of the benefits of the digital exam. Whereas, the downside of the digital exam is that you don't get to go back and look at questions, right? It locks those questions. So use that to your advantage for sure. Kids that are in class, I'll show you like when you open up, like when you look at the test, it'll look like this. look like this. This will be your front page where it will zoom back in, where it'll say like in your response, do the following, right? And so there's your thesis, there's where the argument part, there's your the analysis part. It talks about HIP right there. So they've got it listed out. It's just not in that same format that we've been practicing, but it is there in case you need to go back and check at the end, like as you're working. Okay. So if we zoom on how the documents can earn you points, the most difficult point to earn is the supports. I think maybe 2 students on the Cold War DBQ earned the supports point, okay, which is this middle one. It's difficult, especially if you struggle with the thesis statement. And this is why I really wanted to go over it today or do a writing workshop on it, because obviously that's somewhere where we need to kind of improve. So the describes is pretty simple. This is a point that's like a gimme point to kids. There are some kids around the country that have taken this class, and the only thing that they are going to be able to correctly do is to look at the DBQ, look at the documents, and the only thing they're going to be able to do is describe the document, right? Lawson didn't answer any of the chairman's questions before the House of Un-American Activities Committee. And that's all they'll be able to do. They don't know the context behind it. They don't know why, like they don't know Lawson's point of view. They're just not gonna be able to do that. And so the first point most of you will earn just by trying to get that explains point, okay? So if you're using the document in a way that you're using those HIP strategies, you're providing context for the document, you are talking about the author's point of view or their purpose or the intended audience, you more than likely are going to still be describing the document, right? You can't talk about Lawson's point of view without talking about the document. Does that make sense? Or describing the document, okay? And you guys have done so well on this. Like most students are earning that explains point, okay? And you have to do that for 3 documents, which shouldn't be an issue, right? Because what we're practicing is I want you guys for every document to describe, explain, support, okay? Today, what we're really gonna be focusing on is how to earn this supports point. So what I did is, because you're familiar with the Cold War DBQ, is I kind of use that as our example for today. So if you wanna look back at like the documents and all of that, and this is this was something that I did a couple like years ago, and I wrote a thesis statement that's a complex thesis statement. For today though, I wrote a different one, okay? So, although the Cold War positively impacted the economy through job growth, the Cold War negatively impacted society through anti-communist hysteria, okay? This too, I think you could use this to earn the complexity point, because you're looking at the extent to which the Cold War impacted the United States. You're not just saying these things impacted the United States. It just kind of depends. You could also argue that one thing impacted America more than another, okay? My thesis responds to the prompt. It establishes a line of reasoning because it says that it impacted the economy through job growth. So my number one focus, and you'll see this, I'm going to use job growth over and over and over again in my body paragraphs, because that is how you show support. You're using these documents as evidence to support the claim that you're making. Does that make sense? And so one of my things I'm really going to recommend today, and I know this is probably not what you've been taught in English, but please be repetitive. Use the words from your thesis in your paragraphs, okay? Because, and I explained this earlier in a one-on-one when we were talking about it, when you're at the AP reading and you're reading the same essay over and over again, you want to make it as easy for them as possible to follow your train of thought. And the easiest way to do that is to use the language of your thesis statement, because as you can imagine, like as a teacher reading this, keeping track of the documents that you're using and whether you're describing it, supporting it, or explaining it is very tedious. And so if you can be specific in your language, I mean, and I know you guys want to be good writers too, so I wouldn't be like, Roosevelt's point of view was, Eisenhower's point of view was. You can do that and like earn the points. But some consistency in that language, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here in a second, okay? So the paragraph that we're going to look at in particular, and by the way, I picked 4 documents just to show you a wide range of how you can use it. 4 documents is probably a lot to use in an argument. You could probably divide this up a little bit. I also think that document 6, the Education Act one, I think that that could probably go with fear and communist hysteria, right? That kind of makes sense. But I just wanted to show you how you could use that document in supporting that claim, okay? I've got 2, there's example 2 documents there, but I linked that in. So this is a huge paragraph, right? Well, I did that because as you are grouping documents, when you read the prompt and you analyze the documents and you are trying to figure out what your thesis is going to be, okay? If you notice that you have like one part of your thesis is like stronger than the other, if you're like, man, I can nail the job thing, okay? Start with that body paragraph first. Because if you run out of time, you're not putting your weak argument first and like, maybe I'll get the describes, explains, supports. Start out with your strongest argument first so that you know that you're getting those points. Does that make sense? Kinda, yeah. We have a few people acknowledging, okay? So what I did is I went through and I wrote a body paragraph, and it has transitions and all those things. So you can see where the white part is where those are the transitions and not necessarily something that would earn me a point, unless it has something to do with SFI, okay? The bright pink purple color is the SFI that I'm using with this argument, with this claim, okay? Some of it will be used could earn you the historical context point on for the explains. Does everyone understand what I mean when I say that though? Like, do you know what it means to use historical context to analyze the document? Or does that not make sense at all? I'm guessing that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'll show you here in a second, okay? So the first document, which I think was a hard document to use because a lot of kids want to talk about foreign policy with document 1 and document 4. But remember that the essay is about American society. So I have to connect it back to American society, okay? I have a topic sentence. I highly recommend your body paragraphs include a topic sentence so that you are reinforcing your thesis statement. The Cold War positively impacted the American economy by promoting job growth. And then I get a little bit more specific here. Doesn't need to be in my thesis, but I can put it here. Through trade, defense spending, and education. That's almost like another mini thesis statement, right? Towards the end of World War II, which is context actually, President Roosevelt was looking to the future and how he and Congress could better promote businesses through international trade and the creation of the World Bank. Roosevelt believed that if the US reduced tariffs, it would help American manufacturers and promote job growth. I'm actually going to underline every time I mention job growth. After the war was over, it was a growing fear among Americans that without the war demand, so you could actually even do World War II here, right? The economy could fall back into an economic depression. This blue part right here is how you earn the explains point. Blue is explains, green is describes, yellow is supports. By talking about this fear of the economic depression, that's context for the document, right? I'm setting the scene for what was kind of the thought process of Americans, okay? Same thing here when I say President Roosevelt was looking to the future, that's his purpose, right? Or his point of view. Even down here, Roosevelt believed, that's point of view. You don't have to do every single one for a document. You only have to do one. It just so happened as I was typing this out and using the document or like, providing that information for the document, I actually did like purpose, point of view, and historical context for that. Okay. I think, did I even talk about Congress? Maybe not. Okay, I don't think I said that. Okay. So that explains and describes. Now, this Cold War policy of supporting democracies and capitalism through reducing tariffs and an increase in international trade positively impact the American economy and manufacturing jobs. That is how you earn the supports point. Use the words from your thesis, from your topic sentence, and specifically referencing this document as how it supports it. Does that make sense? Is that somewhat helpful? Yeah? Okay. Transitioning into the next document. And by the way, I'm not saying document 1 says that the World Bank, I'm not doing that. I'm giving Roosevelt the credit, okay? And then I'm doing an parenthetical citation here. Okay. In addition to promoting international trade, Cold War policy was focused on investing in defense. The Eisenhower administration adopted a foreign policy of brinkmanship. You could earn the outside evidence point in your transitions, right? That SFI point, everyone should have that for sure. Put as much SFI as possible because you're being as specific. The more that you're specific in your evidence, the more likely you are to do well and earn points, okay? Brinkmanship is also historical context for the arms race, which is the context for, I think, the remaining documents too, right? Brinkmanship, which increased defense spending to research, build, and stockpile weapons that could be used to intimidate the Soviet Union aggression during the Cold War. This policy impacted the American economy by creating jobs. That's my supports, right? Making connections. I said something about jobs. I need to underline it. Did I miss any other jobs? Oh, manufacturing jobs. Okay. In the defense industry, mostly in parts of California and scattered throughout the South and West. The military industrial complex map shows that defense spending dominated these state economies through government contracts and military bases that supported Cold War policy. Now, I don't mention the word jobs here, but if you're talking about state economies, government contracts, you could have put the word jobs in there as well, but I already did it up here, okay? That's the yellow is how I supported the document. More context. This will also lead to the Sun Belt migration, in which millions of Americans move to these regions from the Midwest and the Northeast looking for economic opportunity and employment. Employment works like jobs, right? Okay. That piece of evidence supports my thesis, so you could earn outside evidence that way. Make sure that if you are trying to earn that outside evidence point, you only get credit if you explain it. You just can't list a bunch of stuff. You have to explain it, okay? As the arms race progressed, so did the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, resulting in the first successful satellite launched into space by the Soviet Union. Sputnik's success placed a lot of fear in America as it was falling behind in technological advancement. So I'm setting the scene for the National Defense and Education Act, okay? I'm describing it here where it's green, okay? It's about STEM. This government-backed job training, I was a little redundant here, Cold War policy impacted the American economy by continuing to focus on creating jobs. I use the word focus too many times, specifically in technology, science, and math in order to better compete with the Soviet Union. See how I'm supporting it? I'm using the words American economy, impacted, Cold War policy impacted American economy, job creation. I'm supporting my thesis, okay? As a result, students that benefited from the legislation would go on to work in defense industries like NASA, which is historical context, which expanded over the next decade as it employed mathematicians, physicists, pilots, and others, How are we feeling? Is that helpful? Do I need to keep going on to my last document or we got it? Yeah, and of course, this is there for you guys to read. Question, yeah.
The sentence with the where you just read it, it said the Cold War policy impacted the American economy by continuing to focus on creating jobs, focus specifically in technology, science, and math. Would that sentence earn the supports point, or which one?
It's the supports, yep. Yellow is supports, and I need to put that on for some.
Whoa, what just happened to your mic?
Yeah, it's going like nuts. Yeah, it's like,
You sound like a robot.
yeah. Wait, speak, talk.
Hello, testing.
Oh
testing.
yeah. It's
Okay, hold on. What about now?
nope, still bad.
I'm recording this session too. Wonderful. All right, I'm gonna leave and come back in, okay?